As tournament season rages on, it was a pretty significant week in pro wrestling, highlighted by the debut of Mercedes Moné in AEW and some really good matches across the board from the usual suspects. We'll get right into it, but just a reminder that I haven't seen every single match to have taken place, and the ones I do choose to talk about are all based on my personal enjoyment and nothing else. A slight spoiler warning as well, as I will be talking about match finishes here too. After watching 75 matches spanning 12 promotions, here are a few of my favorites from the last week. Tucked away amongst the headlines coming out of Big Business was a match that was very much booked for me. I've been a Jay White guy for a while, and while it hasn't necessarily been a good thing to be that during this AEW run, his match with Darby Allin was not only one that I enjoyed a whole lot, but an efficient way to get him back on track as well. Darby enters this match with a literal target on his back after his insane swan dive from the week prior. Naturally, the majority of Switchblade's offense is centered around this to devastating effect. The two complement each other very well. Both can pull some very clever reversals out of thin air, and White's cruel, opportunistic tendencies paired with Darby's bumping and selling make for a nice dynamic. There's a cool moment early on when White lays in with a chop for the first time, and the crowd wakes up as that first shot registers. It's a nice reminder of who exactly they're dealing with. Shortly after, we get the spot where it's implied that this is where Darby Allin broke his foot. I'm no authority on how wrestlers should handle these situations, and I don't really have much to say on it other than it's insane that the match continued at this pace in spite of it. That pace is maintained as White does a variety of messed up things to attack Darby's heavily bandaged wounds. I appreciate the range of how simple some of the attacks are compared to the gruesome set pieces of the Darby match that are included with this. One move in particular was White just pulling Darby's leg when he climbed up the ropes, just for Darby to take a back bump onto the turnbuckle. It's one swift motion without any of the plunder, and it comes off just as devastating as the suplex into the chair or the vault over the steel steps. Here though, it's Darby's own risk-taking that is his undoing, as White rolls out of the way of an apron dive, nearly ending things in a countout. Darby, just beating the count, is caught in a Blade Runner in the end, which is a nice balance of giving that crazy spot the space it deserves, while putting Jay White over clean. I really enjoyed what these two were able to put together, and I wouldn't mind them picking this up where they left off when Darby makes his eventual return. Taking that match and the post angle into account, this positions White in a spot he probably should have been in before the months of diversion with MJF and the Acclaimed, while writing Darby off TV in the process. I haven't had much to say about the New Japan Cup. It hasn't been for me, and I know I'm not the only one who feels this way. Seeing Shingo Takagi and Gabe Kidd drawn in the second round, it seemed like it'd be pretty hard to mess that up. I don't think it hit the ceiling that they're capable of, but in this case, it's an oasis in the middle of a drought. Both Kidd and Shingo are ass kickers with short tempers, and they live up to that reputation by brawling on the outside before the match even begins. Once the match actually starts, Kidd is overwhelmed early and takes things back outside. When Kidd gets an advantage, Shingo tries to give himself some space by heading into the crowd. This results in one of my favorite sequences of the entire match, where Kidd starts throwing barricades at Shingo's head before hitting a pile driver into some chairs. I don't know how to properly describe it, but something about throwing barricades in these brawls is so ridiculous and it just does it for me. After the big count-out tease, you get what you signed up for. These two beat the hell out of each other in a very fun bomb fest that's a bit restrained by some of the main event formula stuff. Gabe Kidd fits in here nicely though. It's safe to say that Shingo could put on this type of match with damn near anyone, though Kidd matches his bullish energy and is just as loud and intense to boot. I would love to see this pairing in the G1 as it's ideal for a tournament setting. If you catch anything from the cup, I suggest it be this match, and if those praises seem generous, consider it grading on a curve. We are back with more Rey de Parejas from Dragongate, more specifically what's been going on with the Kung Fu Masters and the turmoil within Natural Vibes. A strong shift put in by Susumu, Mochizuki, and YAMATO complements yet another match that starts and ends with Jackie Funky Kamei. At risk of rehashing from last week's video, so many of those strengths are carried over into this match. The heat segment on Jackie leads to the Jason Lee hot tag that sends the match into the next gear. But Yamato and Susumu are not big hug, and they bring their own flavor to this. The big chop exchange provokes Jackie to fight his way out to secure the tag, and I thought Susumu was especially good down the stretch. Where this differs from last week is that Vibes were not able to overcome their communication issues. Jason Lee drills Kamei with a forearm, and amidst the ensuing chaos, another aerial attack from Kamei hits his partner in return. Left to fend for himself, the disadvantage was just too much this late into the match. Lee would be pinned by Susumu. It's yet another strong Kung Fu Masters match that further wears on the tension within the faction. The Vibes vs. Vibes match in Jackie's hometown actually falls into next week, and I'm eager to see how this story continues to develop as we reach its boiling point. It's really cool of Dragongate to include these important story beats in the YouTube digest shows. It feels rewarding for following this entire tournament, or even if you're tuning in to give it a try, you're getting something substantial. If you haven't yet, there's a bunch of the YouTube episodes up from this tournament for free, so it's a good chance to give it a shot. I'm one of many who is just happy that this match happened. Two of my all-time favorites meeting after years of this existing outside of the realm of possibility, and on free television no less. Was this all it could have been? No. Does it have its flaws? Yes. But the sentiment outweighs those things, and what we got was pretty damn good. I tried to ground my expectations to whatever limitations are present now, and my one main flaw is that there's some limb work that doesn't really go anywhere. Danielson bases the beginning of this match around Shibata's left arm, and as the match went on, it was dropped. This wasn't a deal breaker by any means, though it was noticeable. Everything else here works for me quite a bit. They get nearly 20 minutes, which is longer than Shibata has gone in any singles match in this comeback run. It's deliberately paced with a natural escalation, and the action is very strong for what he can do now. Even with that caveat attached to every Shibata match in this run, these guys still kick the crap out of each other, and the stuff on the mat was strong too, aside from my one complaint. I didn't feel shortchanged here whatsoever. This match feels very true to the spirit of competition. It's celebratory even. These guys pushed themselves and each other just to prove who the better wrestler was. It carried itself with that air of respect, and even when it got more intense and strike-based, it never went the cynical route. I'm sure that version of the match would have kicked just as much ass, even more, but there's a charm to this, especially given the finish. After expending all of these big moves and strikes, it comes down to pin attempts, where Bryan is able to roll through with a victory, and it feels right. It's a shame that the ideals this match is built upon are held under such bad faith scrutiny, as it's very much wrestled for the love of the game. Given how special this was to me, I thought I'd had a lot more to say about it, but really, it's just one you need to see for yourself. DDT's Judgment Anniversary show took place over the weekend, and I had a great time with it. Given that it is a 5-hour-long DDT show, obviously not everything will land depending on your tastes, but I thought that nearly all the marquee title matches delivered. I was very high on the painful jungle death match between Hideki Okatani and Shunma Katsumata, and Mao and Takeshi Masada's Universal title sprint, but the main event stood out to me as a genuinely great world title match, as Yuki Ueno had to earn his ascension to acehood against the man who embodies DDT, HARASHIMA. This is as big match gets, and I understand that it might not connect with everyone. There's a reason why so many attempts at this type of thing go wrong. Thankfully, HARASHIMA is one of the best in these spots, and the end product was spectacular. It's one of those matches that most promotions would have set out to do in 40 minutes that DDT handles in 22. Ueno is aware that he has to throw everything he has at the former ace to keep his championship, and I think going this hard this early justifies that. When back at ringside, a lot of this is driven through HARASHIMA's performance. The switch flips, he has an answer for most of Ueno's high-flying offense and punishes him when in control. In these moments, he acknowledges that he knows how good he is, and he's going to make Ueno earn it. You can easily point to his delivery of chops or kicks, but there's other aspects to his game that come off just as nasty. One instance that stood out to me was HARASHIMA kneeing Ueno in the head in a fireman's carry before hitting a lung blower. They both hit hard, but something else that these two excel at is their timing. With this style of match, you're going to see some insane counters, and the one that sticks out in my head is a best moonsault ever countered by HARASHIMA's shins directly to the face. This is one of many mid-air reversals that are executed incredibly well, and are fitting for those massive swells of energy as the match inches towards its finale. As it reached its peak, HARASHIMA's last fire-up in Somato was an amazing moment. Unfortunately, it would be in vain, as Ueno had one more counter up his sleeve. A perfectly timed dropkick off of a springboard Somato attempt gave him the opening to hit a WR to put away the ace. I hope I'm not doing an injustice to Ueno, as I did think he was good in this match, and his athleticism was necessary for a lot of what they were doing. I just couldn't help but get wrapped up in Harashima's individual performance. His offense, selling, and the facial expressions, especially while his eyes were glazed over, were fantastic. Newer DDT fans, and that includes myself, haven't gotten a ton of big match Harashima over the last 2 years or so. Though here at 49 years old, he proved he can still go at the highest level when it matters most. And before I go, here are some honorable mentions. Katsuhiko Nakajima vs Fuminori Abe from All Japan March 12th. I like this, though compared to all of the discourse surrounding it, it was blown completely out of proportion. It's a fun match, but nothing on either extreme of love or hate for me. Jun Akiyama vs Kazuki Hirata from DDT, air date March 13th. If you like Hirata's shtick, you'll love this. It's nonsense of the highest degree. Willow Nightingale vs Riho from AEW March 13th. A solid main event from Big Business that shows AEW has the ability to showcase their better in-ring performers of the division, while the champions are currently occupying a more gimmick-oriented space. Star Jr. vs Magnus from MLW March 16th. A fun lucha fireworks show that you can find for free here on YouTube. And last but not least, Hanan vs Starlight Kid from Stardom March 17th. A follow-up from last week as Hanan advances to the semifinal. It's cool to see her have the strength advantage here and to see a different side of her moveset as she progresses further. And that is it from me. If you got this far into the video, thank you so much for your time and for hearing what I have to say. Be sure to do all of the obligatory YouTube stuff by liking and subscribing, and find me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Outer Sevan. Let me know if I missed anything worth checking out, and I'll talk to you again next week.